3 weeks after the first contact, the Crythian Empire dispatched its 7th Fleet to finish what the initial force had started. This time they came prepared. 200 warships, battle-hardened crews, commanders who had crushed rebellions across the galaxy. They would not be humiliated by primitive savages again. Fleet Admiral Corvin studied the tactical display as his armada emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. The humans had been busy. Debris fields marked the sites of dozens of battles throughout the asteroid belt. Automated defense platforms dotted strategic points. Primitive but numerous. Scan for their fleet, Corvin ordered. Multiple contacts, Admiral. Concentrated near Mars orbit. Energy signatures indicate, Admiral, these are actual military vessels, not civilian conversions. Corvin's eyes narrowed. So the humans had used those 3 weeks to deploy their real forces. Good, he preferred fighting. Soldiers to madmen. What Corvin didn't understand was that Earth's military had spent 3 weeks doing something unprecedented. In human history, they had studied the footage from the first battle and realized something profound. The volunteers, the rejects, the psychologically unfit, they had been effective not despite their instability, but because of it. They had fought without fear because they genuinely didn't feel it the same way others did. So the Earth Defense Command made a controversial decision. They didn't just deploy regular military units. They deployed the special forces groups that other special forces whispered about. The ones with classified psychological profiles. The ones who volunteered for suicide missions and seemed disappointed when they survived. Leading the Earth Fleet was Admiral Patricia Cole, a career officer with 30 years of experience. She was professional, calm, and deeply uncomfortable with the orders she had received from Earth Command. "Ma'am, the crews are aboard and ready," her executive officer reported, though I have to say reviewing their personnel files was disturbing. Admiral Cole nodded grimly. "I read them too. Half of these people shouldn't be allowed near weapons, let alone starships. But command was clear. We need time. These crews will buy us that time." The flagship EDS Retaliation was crewed primarily by soldiers from the 13th Special Operations Group, a unit so classified that most military personnel didn't know it existed. They recruited exclusively from individuals with documented antisocial personality traits, provided those traits manifested as hyperaggression toward enemies rather than toward civilians or fellow soldiers. Their commander was Colonel Ryan Hayes, a man whose psychological evaluation included phrases like abnormally high pain, tolerance, lacks normal fear response, and demonstrates concerning enthusiasm for close-quarters combat. He had 17 confirmed kills in hand-to-hand combat and had once walked 3 miles, with a broken leg to reach an extraction point, killing 4 enemy combatants along the way. Standing beside him on the bridge was Major Kelly Price, whose file noted she had been referred to military psychological services 6 times for inappropriate affect during combat situations. She smiled at explosions. She laughed when shot at. Her nickname in her old unit had been the Happy Reaper. As the Crythian fleet advanced into the solar system, the Earth vessels moved to intercept near Mars. The 2 fleets faced each other across the void, and for a moment there was silence. Then Ryan's voice crackled across all frequencies, broadcasting to both the human and Crythian fleets. "Attention, Crythian vessels. You made a mistake coming back. The first group you met? Those were our civilians. Our crazy people in spacesuits. We're the professionals. Let me show you the difference." The Crythian response was predictable. A wall of missiles launched from their fleet. Thousands of warheads designed to overwhelm any defense. The Earth fleet didn't even attempt to evade. They accelerated directly into the missile swarm. "All ships, initiate Close Defense Protocol Omega," Admiral Cole ordered, her voice steady despite what she was authorizing. Close Defense Protocol Omega was a doctrine that had been proposed and rejected 17 times by various Earth military committees. It was too reckless, too dangerous, too insane. It required ships to fly directly into enemy missile swarms and use point defense weapons at near-suicidal ranges, relying on speed and aggression instead of evasion and distance. It required crews who wouldn't flinch when missiles detonated meters from their hull. Crews who would push their ships past safety limits. Crews who genuinely didn't care if they died, as long as they took the enemy with them. The Crythians watched in confusion as the human ships charged forward, their point defense systems creating a web of fire that detonated missiles at ranges that should have destroyed the human vessels. Ships took damage, hulls were breached, but they kept coming. "They're insane," Corvin's tactical officer whispered. "They're dead," Corvin corrected. "All weapons. Fire at will." But the humans had already closed to energy weapon range, and that's when the real nightmare began. Earth's ships weren't designed for long-range bombardment. They were designed for knife fights. Every vessel mounted oversized engines that let them maneuver like fighters despite their size, and their weapons were designed for devastating close-range firepower. The EDS Retaliation lived up to its name. Ryan Hayes stood calmly on the bridge as his ship wove through Krithian fire like a dancer, closing to within 200 meters of a Krithian battleship before unleashing its main cannons. The electromagnetic railguns fired solid tungsten rounds at a significant fraction of light speed. At this range, the Krithian shields might as well have been paper. The rounds punched through the enemy ship's hull, through multiple decks, and out the other side. Atmosphere vented from dozens of breaches, target damaged. "Moving to next target," Ryan reported, his voice utterly calm as his ship shook from enemy fire. "Major Price, I believe that's one for me." "You're falling behind." Kelly's ship, the EDS Vengeance, rolled past a Krithian cruiser while inverted, firing its weapons into the enemy's engine section from less than 100 meters away. "That's two for me, Colonel. Maybe you should try flying closer." The radio chatter between Earth ships was professional, but carried an undercurrent that disturbed the Krithians listening in. These people were having fun. They were keeping score. They were competing to see who could get closest to enemy ships before firing. One pilot, Commander Nick Foster, accelerated his destroyer to ramming speed toward a Krithian frigate, firing all weapons continuously. The Krithians assumed it was another suicide run and braced for impact. At the last possible second, Foster's ship rolled 90 degrees and passed within meters of the enemy hull, its broadside weapons firing the entire time. The maneuver was so reckless that 3 of Foster's crew members blacked out from the G-forces. Foster's laughter echoed across the communications channel. "Anyone else want to try the Razor's Edge?"
"It's a rush!"
The Krithian formation broke as human ships swarmed through it like sharks in a feeding frenzy. Every time a Krithian vessel tried to retreat, human ships pursued with relentless aggression. Every time they tried to regroup, human ships slammed into the formation, breaking it apart. Admiral Corvin had fought in 43 battles across 12 star systems. He had never seen anything like this. These humans fought as if death was a bonus prize rather than something to be avoided. "All ships, full retreat," he ordered. "Maximum acceleration out of the system." But the humans had anticipated this. Smaller, faster ships had circled around the Krithian formation during the battle. As the Krithian fleet tried to flee, they found their escape route blocked by a thin line of human destroyers. It should have been trivial to brush aside such a small force. But those destroyers were crewed by people like Lieutenant Sophie Turner, whose file simply stated, "Do not deploy unless victory is expendable in favor of making a statement." Her ship, outgunned and outnumbered, accelerated directly toward the leading Krithian battleship. She fired everything she had, weapons overheating, power systems straining past their limits. When her missiles were gone, she used railguns. When those ran dry, she used laser batteries. When those burned out, she used the ship's maneuvering thrusters to position her vessel directly in the battleship's path. This is Lieutenant Turner to all Krithian vessels. "If you want to leave, you go through me, and I promise you that's going to cost more than you want to pay." The battleship tried to swat her aside with point defense fire. Her ship took hit after hit, systems failing, hull breaching. She didn't move. The battleship fired its main cannons. Sophie's ship was vaporized. But in the 17 seconds she had bought, the rest of the Earth fleet had caught up. The Krithian retreat turned into a rout as human ships fell upon them from behind. By the time the Krithian survivors managed to jump to faster-than-light speeds, they had lost 89 ships. The human fleet had lost 32, including Sophie Turner's destroyer. Admiral Cole stood on her bridge looking at the casualty reports. 32 ships, over 4,000 dead, but Earth was still free, and the Krithians had learned an important lesson. "Communications, send a message to Earth Command," she ordered. "Tell them we held the line. Tell them the enemy is retreating. And tell them..." She paused, thinking of Sophie Turner and the thousands like her who had died buying time for humanity. "Tell them we need more time. The Crithian High Council chamber was carved from a single massive crystal, its walls reflecting the dim red light of their homeworld's sun. 12 council members sat in a circle, their exoskeletons clicking softly as they shifted in agitation. Before them, Fleet Admiral Corvin stood, his uniform burned and torn from the battles he had barely survived. "Explain," Council Prime Thexus commanded, his voice cold with barely contained fury. "Explain how the 7th Fleet, the same fleet that crushed the Hegemony Rebellion and pacified the Torvan systems, was defeated by a species that barely has faster-than-light travel." Corvin's mandibles twitched with what might have been shame or anger. "Council Prime, the human forces we encountered were unlike anything in our tactical databases. They don't fight to win territory or achieve strategic objectives. They fight to kill us. Every engagement, regardless of tactical situation, they close to melee range. They ram our ships when they run out of ammunition. They sacrifice themselves to create openings for other units. Standard deterrence protocols are ineffective. They're primitives," Council Member Vexar interjected. "Savages with stolen technology." "No." Corvin's response was firm. "They're not primitives. Their technology is less advanced than ours, yes, but their tactics, counselors, I've reviewed every battle recording. They're coordinated, professional, and highly skilled. But they operate under assumptions that no rational military would accept." He activated a holographic display showing footage from the Mars battle. The Council watched in silence as a human destroyer, burning and venting atmosphere, continued firing even as its crew compartments were exposed to vacuum. "Acceptable casualty rates?" Thexus asked quietly. "They don't have acceptable casualty rates," Corvin replied. "They have expected casualty rates. Every ship, every crew is considered expendable as long as they damage us in return. We've intercepted their communications. Their commanders order suicide attacks and their subordinates respond with enthusiasm. They celebrate their own deaths if it means killing more of us." The council chamber fell into uncomfortable silence. The Crithian Empire had built its power on logical warfare, calculated risks, acceptable losses, strategic retreats when necessary. They conquered through overwhelming force and psychological dominance, breaking enemy morale until surrender became preferable to annihilation. But you couldn't break the morale of an enemy that viewed death in combat as a victory. Council member Draxus spoke, her voice thoughtful. "I've been reviewing the psychological profiles our intelligence division has compiled on captured humans. The results are disturbing. These humans, the ones they're sending against us, they score abnormally high on aggression indices and abnormally low on self-preservation instincts. But here's what concerns me. According to their own medical databases, which we've accessed, these individuals represent less than 2% of their total population." 2%? Thexus leaned forward. "You're saying they're sending us their abnormals? They're defectives?" "Not defectives," Draxus corrected. "Specialists. On Earth, these personality types are usually filtered out of normal society because they're too aggressive, too unstable. But for warfare, these same traits are advantages. They've weaponized their own social outcasts," Corvin nodded. "And if this is what their defectives can do, what will happen when they deploy their normal military forces? The ones who actually follow discipline and doctrine?" The question hung in the air like a threat. Council Prime Thexus stood, his exoskeleton gleaming in the red light. "We have conquered 47 systems. We have defeated civilizations far older and more advanced than Earth. We cannot allow one primitive world to threaten our expansion. I propose we do what we have never done before. We commit the First Armada. Every ship, every soldier. We will overwhelm them with such force that even their suicidal tendencies won't matter." "Council Prime," Draxus said carefully. "I must advise caution. We've been analyzing Earth's military production. In the 3 months since first contact, they've converted 17% of their industrial capacity to weapons manufacturing. They're building ships at a rate that shouldn't be possible for their technology level. If we commit the First Armada and fail, we will not fail." Thexus interrupted. "The First Armada has never been defeated. It represents the combined military might of our entire empire. What the Crithian Council didn't know was that Earth's intelligence services had successfully infiltrated their communications networks 3 weeks earlier. Every word of this debate was being transmitted to a bunker deep beneath Geneva, where General Marcus Hammond sat with Earth's top military commanders, listening to the translation in real time. They're committing everything, Colonel Victoria Lang said, studying the tactical projections. Every ship in their empire. If they win, Earth falls. But if we can defeat them, we cripple the entire Crithian Empire, General Hammond finished. How long until they arrive? 8 weeks, maybe 9. Their armada has to gather from across their territory. Hammond stood, looking at the map of Earth's defenses on the massive screen before him. Then we have 8 weeks to finish our preparations. How many ships do we have combat ready? 416 capital ships, 1,200 destroyers and frigates, and about 3,000 converted civilian vessels. But General, the first armada will have over 5,000 warships. We're outnumbered nearly 2 to 1. Good, Hammond said, and there was something in his smile that made even the hardened military officers in the room uncomfortable, because I'm not planning to fight them in space. How's Project Hellgate coming along? Colonel Lang pulled up a new set of files. The orbital platforms are 90% complete. We've successfully tested the gravity manipulation systems. The calculations work. We can do it. And the volunteers? More than we need. When word got out about what Project Hellgate entailed, General, we had to turn people away. Everyone wants in. Hammond nodded slowly. Of course they do. Because we're not asking them to die for Earth. We're giving them the chance to take as many enemies with them as possible. That's what they live for. He turned to address the room. Here's what's going to happen. We let the Crithians bring their entire armada to Earth. We let them think they're going to crush us with overwhelming numbers. And then we introduce them to the most human concept of all. If we can't win, we'll make sure you regret ever trying. In orbit above Earth, construction continued on the massive platforms. Each one was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons and powered by generators that would have seemed impossibly powerful just months earlier. Human engineering had always excelled under pressure, and there was no greater pressure than potential extinction. The platforms weren't designed to destroy the Crithian fleet. They were designed to do something far more terrifying. They would grab the enemy ships, lock them in place with gravity manipulation technology reverse-engineered from captured Crithian vessels, and hold them there while boarding parties did their work. Because humanity had realized something important. They were never going to match Crithian technology or numbers. But in close-quarters combat, in the kind of desperate knife fights where death was always one mistake away, humans excelled. Evolution had shaped them that way. Thousands of years of warfare had selected for aggression, for the ability to remain functional under extreme stress, for the capacity to commit violence when necessary. The Crithians had evolved as pack hunters on a world with few predators. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters on a world filled with predators, including other humans. The difference showed in every aspect of their psychology. The Crithians fought to conquer. Humans fought to survive. And survival on Earth meant being willing to kill anything that threatened you. 8 weeks, Hammond repeated. In 8 weeks, the Crithians are going to learn why every species on Earth that ever competed with humans went extinct. Not because we were stronger or faster or smarter, but because we were mean enough to keep fighting long after it stopped being rational. He looked at the officers around him. These men and women who had trained for decades to defend their world, who followed rules of engagement and international law and codes of military conduct. I want you all to understand something, Hammond said quietly. What we're about to do isn't warfare as you know it. It's not noble. It's not clean. It's ugly and brutal, and when it's over, win or lose, we're going to have to live with what we've become. But if the alternative is letting Earth fall, then we become monsters. Are we clear? Around the room, officers nodded. Some looked grim, some looked determined. A few, notably the ones who would be leading the boarding parties, looked eager. 8 weeks until the first armada arrived. 8 weeks to prepare Earth's last defense. 8 weeks until the Crithians learned that sometimes the species that seems primitive and outmatched is actually the one that's been fighting for survival, since it first learned to use tools. And survival, humanity had learned over millions of years, meant being willing to do absolutely anything to your enemies. No rules, no mercy, no surrender. Just violence. Applied with efficiency and enthusiasm until the threat stopped moving. The Crithians thought they were bringing an overwhelming force to crush a primitive species. The first armada emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 5,000 warships arranged in a pattern that had intimidated countless worlds into immediate surrender. Council Prime Thexus stood on the command bridge of the flagship Eternal Supremacy, watching Earth grow larger on the viewscreen. "Scan for defensive emplacements," he ordered. "Sir, detecting multiple orbital platforms, massive energy signatures, approximately 300 stations arranged in a spherical pattern around the planet." Thexus studied the tactical display. 300 platforms against 5,000 ships. The humans had built impressive fortifications in just 8 weeks, but mathematics was mathematics. Even if every platform destroyed 16 Crithian ships, the Armada would still overwhelm them. "Open a channel. Let's give them one final chance to surrender." The communication went out on all frequencies, translated into every Earth language. It was the standard Crithian ultimatum. Surrender now and be integrated peacefully into the Empire, or be destroyed and integrated by force. Earth's response came from General Hammond himself, his image appearing on every Crithian viewscreen simultaneously. He looked tired, his uniform rumpled, his eyes carrying the weight of what he was about to do. "Council Prime Thexus, I'm told you've conquered 47 systems. That's impressive. Earth has only one system, and we've spent the last 8 weeks turning it into a graveyard. Your ships are welcome to join the decorations." Thexus's mandibles clicked in irritation. "You cannot win. Surrender, and we will be merciful." Hammond smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "You keep using that word, merciful. I don't think it means what you think it means. We've studied your empire. You conquer worlds, subjugate populations, integrate them into your society. That's not mercy. That's slavery with better marketing. You're in no position to—" "I'm in exactly the position to," Hammond interrupted, "because you brought your entire fleet here. Every ship you have. You committed everything to this attack, which means when we destroy you, your empire collapses. Your arrogance is not arrogance, math. You have 5,000 ships. We have 300 platforms. You think that means you win. But here's what you don't know. We don't need to destroy all your ships. We just need to make you regret coming here. And we've had 8 weeks to prepare something special." Hammond leaned forward and his voice dropped to something almost conversational. "Do you know what humans do when they're backed into a corner? When extinction is the only alternative? We cheat, we break every rule. We do things that make other species call us monsters. And then we do worse things, because the first things didn't work fast enough." He nodded to someone off-screen. "Activate Hellgate." Around Earth, 300 orbital platforms hummed to life. The energy signatures spiked to levels that should have been impossible for human technology. And then space itself began to twist. On the Eternal Supremacy, alarms blared across every system. "Sir, massive gravitational distortions. They're generating artificial gravity wells. Our ships are being pulled off course." Thexus watched in growing horror as the perfect formation of the First Armada distorted like an image reflected in a funhouse mirror. Ships that had been kilometers apart were suddenly grinding against each other. Careful spacing meant to maximize overlapping fields of fire became chaotic clusters. And then the platforms fired. Not weapons designed to destroy ships, weapons designed to capture them. Gravity beams locked onto dozens of Crithian vessels simultaneously, holding them in place with forces that made their engines scream in protest. "They're boarding," a tactical officer screamed. "Multiple contacts. They're launching boarding pods." Thousands of small craft erupted from hidden bays on the platforms, each one carrying 30 humans in combat armor. The pods were crude, barely more than engines and life support strapped to a hollow shell, but they were fast and small, and there were so many of them that Crithian point defenses couldn't possibly intercept them all. The pods slammed into Crithian hulls like bullets, cutting through armor with shaped charges before disgorging their cargo directly into the enemy ships. Captain Nathan Drake was in the first wave. His file had been flagged with red warnings: unsuitable for command, excessive risk-taking behavior, concerning enjoyment of combat situations. He had been a problem child in every unit he'd served in, right up until Project Hellgate recruiters saw his file and immediately put him in charge of a boarding team. His pod crunched through a Crithian cruiser's hull, and Nathan was moving before the metal stopped glowing, his team flowing behind him like they'd practiced 1,000 times, which they had. 8 weeks of training for one mission: get aboard enemy ships and cause maximum chaos. The Crithians had prepared for ship-to-ship combat. They had not prepared for enemy soldiers rampaging through their corridors. Nathan's team hit the first Crithian defensive position with overwhelming violence. Humans carried weapons designed for the close confines of ship corridors. Short-range shotguns loaded with armor-piercing rounds, compact assault rifles, and for when ammunition ran out, knives and improvised weapons. But the real weapon was psychological. The Crithians had evolved as logical beings who fought according to tactical doctrine. The humans boarding their ships fought like rabid animals, screaming as they charged, laughing when they got hit, throwing themselves at Crithian positions with suicidal aggression. "Reactor room," Nathan shouted over the chaos. "We need to reach the reactor." His team carved a path through the ship, and when they reached the engineering section, Nathan set charges with hands that didn't shake even though he'd been shot twice and had a piece of shrapnel embedded in his shoulder. 30 seconds, he said calmly, as if he was talking about dinner plans rather than his own imminent death. "Everyone got what they need?" His team nodded. Most were wounded. All were smiling. "Then let's go say hi to the neighbors." They blew a hole through the bulkhead into the adjacent ship, which was locked in close proximity by the gravity beams. The Crithians on that ship barely had time to register that humans were breaching through their hull before Nathan's team was among them, fighting with knives and fists when their ammunition ran dry. Behind them, the charges detonated. The first cruiser's reactor went critical, the explosion tearing through multiple ships locked together by the gravity platforms. This scene repeated itself hundreds of times across the battle space. Boarding teams would capture a Crithian ship, set it to explode, then board the next ship before the charges detonated. Sometimes they made it. Often they didn't. Nobody seemed to care. Lieutenant Claire Martinez led a team that had boarded 7 ships. On the 8th, they were pinned down by heavy Crithian fire, running low on ammunition, and Claire made a decision. "Anyone have breaching charges left?" she asked. "2," someone replied. "Give them here." She took the charges and looked at her team. They were all wounded, exhausted, and trapped. "You know what? I'm tired of sneaking around. Let's try the front door." She sprinted toward the Crithian position, explosives in hand, enemy fire chewing up the corridor around her. The Crithians focused everything on her, which meant they didn't see her team flanking from the side until it was too late. Claire slapped the charges on the Crithian defensive barrier and dove for cover. The explosion cleared the way and her team pushed through, but Claire had taken 3 hits to her armor and wasn't getting up. "Keep moving," she coughed into the radio. "Reactors 2 decks down, go," they went. Because that's what humanity had learned in 8 weeks of preparation. Individual survival didn't matter. Mission completion mattered. Killing the enemy mattered. Everything else was just details. On the Eternal Supremacy, Council Prime Thexus watched his fleet being torn apart from the inside. Every ship that was captured became a bomb. Every boarding action became a horror show as human soldiers fought like demons through his ships. "Sir, we've lost 400 vessels. 1,600 are boarded and reporting enemy combatants rampaging through their decks. We need to retreat." "We can't retreat." Thexus slammed his appendage against the console. "The gravity wells have us locked in place. We're trapped." And that's when he understood. This was never meant to be a battle. It was an execution. The humans had built a prison in space and baited the entire Crithian fleet into it. Now they were methodically destroying every ship, and there was nothing the Crithians could do except die. "Send a surrender signal," Thexus said quietly. "Sir, send the signal. Offer unconditional surrender before they kill us all." The message went out across all frequencies. The Crithian First Armada surrendered. They would cease hostilities immediately. They begged for mercy. Earth's response was not from General Hammond, but from Captain Nathan Drake, broadcasting from somewhere deep inside a Crithian battleship, his voice rough with exhaustion and pain. "Sorry, we didn't quite catch that." "Did you say you surrender?" "That's adorable. Unfortunately, we don't accept surrenders. See, you came here to exterminate us. You brought your whole fleet to wipe out our species. Now you want to surrender? No. You get to find out what it feels like when humans decide you're the enemy. No mercy, no prisoners, no survivors. Welcome to Earth." The signal cut off. The boarding actions continued. Ship after ship fell silent as their reactors overloaded or their life support failed or human boarding. The Crithian Empire had conquered 47 star systems in less than a decade. Commander Vexith stood on the bridge of his warship, watching Earth spin slowly on the view screen. The blue planet looked peaceful and weak. Intelligence reports showed humans were divided into different nations, always fighting each other. They had basic nuclear weapons and no real space defense. This would be easy. The Crithian fleet moved into high orbit around Earth. They sent a message in every human language at once. Surrender in 72 hours or die. Vexith expected the humans to panic, to beg, to give up immediately. Instead, Earth went completely silent for 6 hours. Then a single message came back from somewhere deep underground in the mountains. The voice sounded calm and almost bored. "This is General Hammond of the United Earth Defense Initiative. We got your message. We decline. You have 24 hours to leave our solar system or we consider this war." Vexith laughed at this. United Earth Defense Initiative? They formed a unified command in 6 hours? Impossible. This was just a bluff from a scared species. "Sir, their defense systems are turning on," his officer said. "Energy readings from all over the planet. Strange signatures. Not normal military bases." Vexith waved away the concern. "Prepare to attack their cities. Show them what happens when they refuse us." As the deadline got closer, something odd happened. Ships started launching from Earth. But these were not military ships. They were civilian vessels, mining ships, cargo haulers, even luxury yachts. Someone had strapped weapons onto them, missiles, railguns, and equipment that looked homemade. It was almost funny. What Vexith did not know was that Earth had not sent its regular military. Those forces needed weeks to get ready. Earth needed time. So they sent something else instead. The first wave of defenders were volunteers from a very specific group. Men and women who had scored too high on aggression tests. People who had been kicked out of normal military service for being too violent. The kind of people who smiled when fights started. The ones who got calm when everyone else panicked. Earth did not send its best soldiers to buy time. It sent its craziest people, put them in anything that could fly, gave them weapons, and told them one simple thing. Don't let the aliens reach Earth. Do whatever you have to do. Leading the first group was Captain Jake Morrison. He had been thrown out of the Air Force for being too aggressive. He once chased enemy planes 40 miles past the legal zone, refusing to stop even when his aircraft was falling apart. His psychological report said things like, lacks self-preservation instinct and dangerously obsessed with fighting. His wingman was Lieutenant Amy Brooks. 3 military schools had rejected her for showing too much excitement about combat. She had spent 5 years in underground fighting. Rings before this job came along. As the converted, civilian ships approached the Crithian fleet. Vexith watched with interest. They were not even flying in formation. No discipline, no coordination. Just a mob of ships rushing toward certain death. "Sir, they are not slowing down," his officer reported. "Collision course?" "Many of them are not trying to brake or turn away." Vexith felt worried for the first time. Are their navigation systems broken? Then the first ship hit. Jake Morrison's cargo hauler crashed directly into a Crithian frigate at full speed. The nose was packed with enough explosives to destroy a city block. The frigate's shields caught most of it, but the explosion tore a hole in the hull. Morrison had ejected seconds before impact. His escape pod tumbled through space as he laughed into his radio. "One down. Who is next?" "Amy, I'm beating you." Amy responded by slamming her mining ship into the same frigate's damaged section. Her drilling laser was firing until the moment she hit. She did not eject. The Crithian bridge went silent as they watched the frigate break into pieces. "Report," Vexith shouted. 12 ships have blown themselves up against our fleet. Many casualties. "Sir, they are not trying to win. They just want to damage us. Every ship is basically a bomb." Another voice came through on the human radio frequency. A man named Danny Carter, flying what used to be a luxury yacht. "Hey, alien friends. You know what the difference is between you and me? You are flying because it is your job. I am flying because I always wanted to know what ramming speed really means. Let us find out together." His yacht, loaded with nuclear bombs in the cargo hold, smashed into a Crithian destroyer. The explosion lit up the sky over Earth, so bright people could see it in daylight. The Crithians started dodging, breaking formation, trying to shoot down the suicidal humans. They destroyed dozens of ships, but the humans kept coming. No fear, no stopping. Just violent, happy aggression. One pilot, Lisa Grant, managed to crash land her broken ship on the outside of a Crithian battlecruiser. She then turned off every safety feature on her reactor and set it to explode. She sent one message before it blew. "You picked the wrong species to threaten. We have been killing each other for 10,000 years. You think you scare us?" The explosion killed 200 Crithian crew members. Vexith watched in growing horror as his fleet was being destroyed by what looked like an armed mob. These were not soldiers. Soldiers followed orders, had discipline, and retreated when needed. These humans fought like they wanted to die as long as they killed Crithians too. "Pull back," Vexith ordered. "Retreat to high orbit." But the humans chased them. Their broken fleet followed the superior Crithian ships like wolves chasing wounded animals. The radio chatter between human ships was unlike anything the Crithians had heard before. They were not sharing tactics or giving status reports. They were taunting each other, keeping score, laughing. "I got 3 hits on that cruiser. Yeah, but mine exploded prettier. Does anyone have missiles left? I am out and I really want to hit that big one. Just ram it, you coward." The Crithian fleet retreated beyond the moon. They left behind 17 destroyed ships and thousands of dead crew members. The human fleet was almost completely destroyed. Only a few escape pods and damaged ships survived, but Earth was still there. Still whole, still fighting back. Somewhere on that blue planet, the real Earth military was watching, learning, and getting ready. If these rejects could do this much damage in converted civilian ships, what could actual soldiers do? Vexith stared at the casualty reports. He realized something terrifying. This had been humanity's opening move. It was not designed to win. It was designed to send a message. The message was clear. Earth would not surrender. They would make every part of this invasion cost more than the Crithians could afford to pay. The war had just begun, and already the Crithians were bleeding.